Today, we are diving deep into one of the most important stories ever told, the Abrahamic covenant. Now, this isn't just some ancient myth. We're talking about a series of divine promises so powerful, so earth-shattering, that they would literally shape the course of history for thousands of years.
But that brings up a really big question, right? How do you seal a promise that's supposed to last forever? I mean, we're not talking about a handshake or some modern-day contract. In the ancient world, the most serious promises were sealed with a covenant, a binding, solemn oath where the stakes were, quite literally, life and death.
So let's jump right into the text. Our story really kicks off in Genesis 15, with a scene that is, well, it's deeply symbolic, and to be honest, it's pretty bizarre. This is the moment God formally seals his promise to Abraham, and he doesn't just use words, he uses fire and blood. So what exactly happens here? Well, Abraham is told to perform this very specific, very strange ritual. First, a bunch of animals are cut right down the middle. Then, the pieces are laid out, creating this grim pathway between them. Now, that might sound gruesome to us, but this was actually a known way to ratify a treaty back then. And then, for the grand finale, a smoking furnace and a flaming torch, which symbolize God's holy presence, pass right down that path.
Theologian Meredith Kline has this absolutely stunning take on what's happening. He calls it the strange self-malediction of the Lord of the Covenant who would himself undergo the covenant's curse. Whoa, that is a heavy, powerful idea. But what in the world does self-malediction even mean?
It's a self-imposed curse. Think about it. By passing between those animal parts, God is essentially saying, if I ever break this promise to you, Abraham, may I myself be cut apart just like these animals. The key here, and you can't miss this, is that God isn't just making a promise. He is binding himself to it with an unbreakable oath, and he's the one taking on the full, deadly consequences of its broken. The weight is all on him.
Okay, so the story jumps forward, and not just by a little bit. We're talking 24 long years. Can you imagine waiting that long? Abram is now 99 years old, and he still doesn't have that promised son from his wife Sarah. And it's right here, in Genesis 17, that the covenant gets reconfirmed and, get this, dramatically expanded.
And the first sign that things are getting bigger? A name change. His name was Abram, which probably meant something like the Father is exalted. But God changes it to Abraham, which means father of many nations. You see what's happening? The promise is growing, right there in his name. It's going from a personal promise to one that's going to produce entire nations, even kings.
And along with all those descendants, the covenant includes a very specific promise of land. And we're not talking about a small plot. This territory is huge, stretching all the way from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates. And here's the kicker. It's described as an everlasting possession. The sheer scope and the permanence of this promise, it's just staggering.
But you know, a promise this big, one that's supposed to last for generations and generations, it needed a physical sign, right? Something tangible that every single male member of this community would carry with them.
And that sign is circumcision. And look, this was not some optional tradition. The obligation was absolute. The text is crystal clear on this. If you neglect it, that person would be cut off from his people. And that's severe language. It means being completely exiled from the community, cut off from the blessings of the promise.
But like so many rituals in the Bible, the physical act was always supposed to point to something deeper. The outward sign, the circumcision of the flesh, was really a powerful symbol for an inward spiritual reality, what the scriptures call the circumcision of the heart. It's this idea that echoes all the way from Deuteronomy to the letters of Paul in the New Testament, and it all points to this fundamental need for an internal cleansing, a heart truly devoted to God.
So we have all these incredible promises, descendants, land, blessing, and just when you think you know where the story is going, it takes its most dramatic, heart-stopping turn. We've arrived at Genesis 22, the ultimate test of Abraham's faith, a story known as the Akedah, or the binding of Isaac.
The command that comes from God is it's almost unthinkable. After waiting decades for this child of promise, Abraham is told, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and sacrifice him. It's a test so severe, it seems to fly in the face of everything God had promised up to this point.
And this is the impossible conflict Abraham is staring down. On one hand, you have the promise, stated in no uncertain terms, in Isaac shall your seed be called. Isaac is the future of the covenant. But on the other hand, you have the command, sacrifice him. The theologian John Calvin called it a horrible thing because it looks for all the world like God is contradicting his own unbreakable promise.
So what does Abraham do? He proceeds in faith. The New Testament gives us this incredible insight into his mindset. It says he reasoned that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead. I mean, think about that. His faith was so radical that he believes God could literally overcome death itself to keep his word.
So after Abraham passes this gut-wrenching test and the angel of the Lord stops him at the very last second, providing a ram for the sacrifice instead, the covenant is powerfully reaffirmed. But there's a new and really fascinating little wrinkle added to the language this time. The promise is repeated, almost word for word, but it's introduced with a crucial new word, because. The blessing will come because you have obeyed my voice. Now, this raises a really tough question, doesn't it? Did Abraham's obedience somehow earn the promise that was supposed to be a free gift?
Well, according to thinkers like Calvin, the answer is a hard no. Abraham's obedience isn't the meritorious cause. It's not like he earned it as if it were a paycheck. Instead, his faithfulness was the fruit of God's grace that was already at work in him. It was the divinely ordained means through which the promise was going to be carried out. It's a subtle difference, but it's an absolutely crucial one. It's the difference between earning a reward and faithfully participating in a gift you've already been given.
So, let's wrap this all up. What are the big takeaways from this incredible story? Well, the Abrahamic covenant is, at its core, a promise of seed, land, and a blessing for the whole world. It was sealed, not by a human, but by God's own life and death oath. It was marked by the physical sign of circumcision, and it was tested to the absolute limits of human faith. And ultimately, it's a story that's carried out through this inseparable mix of divine grace and human faithfulness.
And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on. This ancient story has been picked apart for centuries. But at its heart, it asks a question that is absolutely timeless, a question that hits home for all of us. What does this story reveal about the true nature of faith, especially in those moments when a promise you're holding on to and the reality you're living through seem to be in complete and agonizing conflict? That is something worth thinking about.